What is going on, everybody, and welcome back into the Draft Geeks podcast. We are back into another position rankings. Today, we are combining offensive line. So that's interior offensive line, offensive tackles. We're giving our top 10 plus honorable mentions like we have done. Lots of guys to talk about in this class, whether they're tackles in college that might be bumped into guard, they're true tackles, they're going to be guards, whatever it is. Lots of guys to get through in here. So without further ado, the Draft Geeks podcast starts right now.
Welcome into another episode of the Draft Geeks podcast. I'm Max Shostak over at the Draft Geek, here with Jace Campbell over at Pat's Drive. Today, as Jace mentioned, we have O-line for you, the big beauties. I don't think we'll ever call them big uglies on this show. The heart of the offense. You can't have a good offense without these guys. So we'll go over our top 10s at O-line, but there's a lot of guys in this class that are worth talking about. So there's going to be some honorable mentions from both of us, and obviously some overlap in our rankings because it is a group that we do see similar. I'm excited to get into this one. Jace, how are you doing?
Yeah, doing good. I'm excited too because it's similar to what we wanted to talk about with like the receiver class where, okay, it might not have the top in town. It doesn't have the Joe Alt like last year and maybe even not in the Olu Fashanu and stuff. But I mean, I watched 20 guys. I'm assuming you watched somewhere in that range too. And there's a lot of good football players here, man. And it speaks to the depth of this draft class at all positions. It's not just at the offensive line position, but there's very good offensive tackles in college that are measuring that they're going to be interior offensive linemen that we'll have those discussions about. There's obviously guys that are going to be day 2, day 3 picks at the offensive line position that are starters instantaneously and no one saw them coming. That happens every year. It's one of the most or one of the hardest positions, in my opinion, to project other than quarterback is there's always guys that are coming out. I mean, these dudes are, how they develop strength, stuff like that. It's very interesting to see. So we got a lot to get into and I'm excited to jump into it.
Yeah. So as we've been doing, we'll have graphics on the YouTube. So if you want to go over to YouTube, subscribe, like the videos, leave a comment. We would really appreciate that. And then Spotify, Apple Podcasts, make sure you're following all that sort of stuff. I know we say it every episode, but it helps us keep going. But yeah, so we'll have graphics as we go along. But first, we'll hit on some honorable mentions. I have like 3, 4, but we can alternate. So I'll go first. It's one guy that we talked a little bit about before the show because we were trying to figure out which are some of our honorable mentions, who are guys that we left off that we like, and then there's some that we left off that we don't really like. I'll start off with one that I do like, but not enough to have in my top 10. It's Cameron Williams, the offensive tackle from Texas. He played right tackle across from Kelvin Banks Jr. He had the option to go back to school. I think Jason and I both would have liked him to go back to school. He's a big player, big dude. And I think with another year of experience in college in the SEC, he could have become a first-round pick. He had 19 penalties over the course of his career, and it's like 16 of them were this year. So he's a little bit of a mess technically. But he's got, a huge frame, heavy hands, long arms, natural play strength, and he's got a couple plays where it does click. So there's a lot of promise with him. I think he's a developmental tackle on day 2. But, definitely somebody worth shouting out, but the floor is really low. He's not somebody I'm comfortable with in my top 10, but just beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, NFL size by him, his frame is one of the best ones in the class, 6'6", 317 pounds. He had 34.5-inch arms. I agree with you. I think that he gave up 5 sacks. He had a ton of penalties. He's only 21 years old. This dude has only started like 13 games in college. He could have went back to college very easily and could have been a top 5 offensive tackle next year, depending on what the class is. So a little bit disappointed in that. I think he does some really good things. I'm not saying he's a bad player. He's super powerful. He's super strong, but the inconsistencies, the lack of experience, things like that. I agree with you. I think he could have went back for one more year of college and it would have benefited him significantly. If you do take this guy, I would probably, I don't know if I'd take him on day 2. If it would have to be late day 2, but you got to know that you got to know that you're taking him to be a developmental piece. I don't think he can start year one. I think he's got to sit behind someone. He's got to learn. Even year two, like we're saying, we think he could use one more year in college. If he doesn't play it all this year, he's just practicing and stuff. He might be a 2-year project in the NFL. That's why I'm not very comfortable with putting him in my top 10 either. But good things like about him: arm length, size, frame, stuff like that. But technically and things is where my concern is.
I think if you need tackle and you take Cameron Williams, you still need tackle, right? You're getting year 2 Cameron Williams. That's what you want to put on the field. It's a little reminiscent of 2024 with Kingsley Sumatia and how you saw disgruntled Chiefs fans because he didn't perform year 1. And I'm like, well, that was the scouting report on him. Like, he shouldn't have played. And then Bears fans with Kieran Amagaji from Yale, 2 players I still believe in. Neither should have really been playing. So I think Cameron Williams projects pretty similarly.
Yeah, moving on to another honorable mention guy that I know a lot of people will probably question why we don't have him in the top 10 is Donovan Jackson, the interior offensive lineman out of Ohio State. Now, some people will be like, well, he played offensive tackle. Well, he played offensive tackle because Josh Simmons got hurt. That was in a pinch, and he did hold his own. But if he has to play tackle in the NFL, I have my concerns. I believe that he is a interior guy all the way in the NFL. He's only 6'3.5". He's 315 pounds. He's really solid. He has good technique. He's smart, great leader. He has a ton of experience at multiple positions on the NFL or on the line in Ohio State. But he's a mediocre athlete. I don't think he moves his feet well. He struggles changing directions. He gets beat with speed consistently. And when he does get out in space, it looks like he has heavy feet and it's uncomfortable for him to run. So I see him as an interior guy. I get he was so good at left tackle off of little experience, but Ohio State really had no other choice. And yeah, he stepped in, filled a hole. They won a national championship because of it, but he wasn't playing there if Josh Simmons was healthy. He's not a left tackle. That's not what he is. So I don't really like that argument. I think he does some really good things. He's a really solid player. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of college, but I don't see him as a top 10 guy, because of some of the athletic restraints.
Yeah, and I'm making a 2-round mock draft right now, and I have him going in the top 50. It's like 49, but I have him going in the top 50 because I do think he's gonna go early. I think just because you saw what he was able to do from a versatility standpoint, and he's got a high floor. He's pretty good. You can tell in between the ears, especially something that comes from playing at Ohio State. But a lot of stuff that I wrote down, I was like, I think his body can get straight up, his pads get high. He's a little grabby at the shoulders. I didn't love his anchor, didn't love the strength in his lower half. Thought he had a tendency to dip his head down and he could miss more twitchy rushers. So I think he's got a lot to work on. I actually noted that one of his best traits is what he does in recovery mode, losing the initial point of contact, but recovering. And then I'm like, if you have so many reps in recovery mode, that's a really big concern for me. So I think Donovan Jackson is, like you mentioned, not a really good athlete on the move. I think he's a good reactive athlete. I think he's got twitch in his hands, but he just has to use it too often in recovery. So I think there may be a learning curve for him. He could be a, higher or low ceiling type of NFL guard, but there's going to be a learning curve for him. I don't think he's some slam dunk guard pick. And I don't think he's an instant starter. Somebody that I left out of my top 10 as well, but I don't think that's going to be a common theme for most people that do what we do. But, somebody I'm lower on. I mean, watched 4 games, really expecting him to be better. Started with the Iowa tape. And I was like, all right, let's get off to a good start. Iowa tape shouldn't be that rough. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be low on Donovan Jackson. And it just kind of continued. But he's, closer to the top 10 than some other guys, but can't say I was his biggest fan.
Yeah, and it's just, I think at guard, he's going to be a very good guard in the NFL. When you're able to go against a little bit bigger pass rushers and you don't have as much space to work your one-on-one moves, when he's dealing with wide 9 rushers and stuff like that coming off the edge, that's where he struggles with his foot speed, things like that, his change of direction. But yeah, he can take counters. If someone's going to try to go across his face, he has strong hands that he can get on you and stop penetration, things like that. So I do think he is going to be a good NFL player. The hype around him and what he did, because they won the national championship and how he replaced Josh Simmons, I feel like is jumping him a little bit too high for my liking.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that statement. I think when you win the Natty, it's an automatic boost and you got to contextualize it a little bit. One more honorable mention from me is it's another guard. It's Tate Ratledge, the guard out of Georgia. He's a really pop player on day 2 for a lot of teams that need interior offensive line. And I just think he's a solid player. He's really feisty, plays with a lot of grit. I think he's got great leg drive, has that finisher's mentality. I think he's got heavy hands, really good in hand fighting situations. Another guy that I don't think is like a super high ceiling player, but I think Tate Ratledge, I'm more confident in him stepping in right away and being a good guard than perhaps a Donovan Jackson, who I think might have a little bit of a learning curve. But, Ratledge has played for Georgia, played in the SEC. Not that, Jackson didn't see great competition, but it's just a pro for both of them. And this class is a little bit thin beyond the top group at interior, outside of the tackles that are going to slide inside. But Tate Ratledge is one of the better true guards in this class, and he absolutely passes the quote unquote aura test with his mullet. He plays like a guard who has a mullet, and that's, you can your imagination on that one, or just go look up a picture of him. But he's a dude.
Yeah, I like Tate Ratledge too. I mean, he tested very well at the combine. 3-year starter in the SEC. He was a part of a national championship team. Very good. He's powerful in the run game. He's stout when guys tries to run through his face. He's another guy, and a lot of interior offensive linemen in the NFL and stuff are late or mid to late round picks and stuff. It's just how they kind of value the guards. He's going to be one of those guys that I believe could be a day 1 starter in the NFL, depending on what situation he goes to. Like, you think about the Texans, who probably need some interior help. If they don't get one of those top guys in the first round or something, they could take a chance on him in the second, wherever, or if he were to fall. But I think he's a decent athlete. Obviously, I think he tested better than what I saw in film. Like, I didn't see this elite athlete. Yes. And then, he was like a 998 RAS score. And I was like,
yeah,
no, that doesn't seem comparative and stuff. But, he's explosive. He has good, strong hands, which you want. He plays with really good pad level, which I love from my interior offensive lineman. And then the other thing is he's got a better frame than a lot of interior offensive linemen. He's 6'6" plus. Like, he's a tall dude. He's got a good NFL frame. So I do like Tate Ratledge. The other guy that I want to shout out is also his teammate. It's center Jared Wilson. I think he's the best true center in this class. I think Gray Zabel has a chance to move in, but when you're talking about like just straight up centers, Jared Wilson, in my opinion, is the best. He's only started 1 year at Georgia, but he ran a 4.84 40-yard dash. He has really tight hands, powerful punch. He knows how to hit in the breastplates. He doesn't get out wide on guys' shoulders. Even though he's an interior guy and he has shorter arms, he does have an 80-inch wingspan. He's like stout and broad. He's got big shoulders, thick. It's what you want your interior guys to look like too. He's a great athlete. He gets out on double teams very easily. He's able to climb. He's able to overtake 2 eyes or whatever. He's helping double teams. So I really like Jared Wilson too. Obviously, we'll have the conversation here in a little bit on the Gray Zabel thing. Is he a guard? Is he a center? What is it? But talking about true centers in this class, I think that Jared Wilson is the best.
Is he 11 for you on your list?
He would be 11 for me.
Okay, so he's 11 for me too. Number 1 true center. I really juggled him and the guy I have at 10 because positional value comes into play a little bit. That kind of spoils that my number 10 is a tackle. But Jared Wilson, great athlete. And I think his broadness is something that I really noted because he's got a wide, strong base as well as a wide, strong upper body. Incredible leg drive. I think he's got long and powerful arms. Everything about his frame is just built to be a center and somebody that can immediately change the interior offensive line for a team that's desperate in that part of the field. He's a beast at the second level, good vision, good on the move. His hands and feet work in unison, explosive at the line of scrimmage. He's nimble. Pad level consistency is the biggest thing for me. And that's something that's really important as a center. You have to play with low pad level as a center. You have no choice. And I think sometimes at Georgia, they the competition they were facing, just didn't go straight at him. So he had more of an opportunity to pop up and help his guards. And then sometimes they'd line up, head up on him, and his pad level would get too high. He gets beat. But I think if he can work on the consistency in his pad level, he's a strong, powerful enough athlete to be an instant starter as a center. and could be one of the better value picks, return on investment picks on day 2 this year.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I have him as three offensive tackle, or sorry, interior, whatever. Offensive line is what we're doing here. 11. He's my
Yeah.
interior offensive lineman 5, though, in this class. Like, he's above Donovan Jackson. I think he's going to provide more, like, the athleticism, what he does in the run game and stuff, I think is going to be of value to some NFL team. They're going to want to take a chance on this guy earlier than some people might want to. So I really do like Jared Wilson. I'm pretty high on him, even though he is probably limited to just a center in the NFL.
Yeah.
He's still going to be really good.
Positional value comes into play for me a lot with him, and I really don't like it because I think I like him more than my 11 ranking indicates, but you're drafting just a center here. But if you need center, this is your guy. I think he goes in the second round. I think there's a lot of late day 2 talk for him. Like, and we'll get Jared Wilson in round 3. I don't think that's realistic. All it takes is one. I look at the Broncos in the 50s. The Falcons also lost their center. So, if you're in need of a center round 2, I'd go Jared Wilson without thinking anything of it. Obviously Gray Zabel's on the board. That's different, but I don't think that's going to happen either. Jared Wilson, really like him. My favorite of the honorable mentions, really glad that you brought him up. I was kind of banking on that. That's why I brought my other 2 guys up.
Yes. So let's go ahead and jump into our, 10 through 7, I believe. We'll pull up the graphics. So again,
10 through 7, yeah.
If you guys are not on YouTube, you guys can hop over here if you want to see the graphics. We'll start off with you, Max. So go ahead and read your 10 through 7.
So at number 10, I have Ariante Ursery, the offensive tackle from Minnesota. At number 9, I have Tyler Booker, the offensive guard out of Alabama. At number 8, I have Jonah Savanaia, the offensive tackle / offensive guard out of Arizona. We'll talk a little bit about that perhaps multi-positional ability there. And then at number 7, I have Marcus Mbow, the tackle who will be moving into guard or hopefully center at the NFL level from.
Yeah, let's I'm trying to think. I guess let's start with Tyler Booker. I think that it's going to be the biggest one that we talk about in this segment right here, because a lot of people have him higher than 9, which is where you have him. I'll get to my 10 through 7, which he is in that category for me too. But let's talk about Tyler Booker right now, because that's going to be, in my opinion, I think, and I think you agree, it'll probably be a little bit controversial for some people.
Yeah, it's going to be controversial because I think he's got a little bit of a reputation as being the safest player in this draft at the offensive line position. And, he's a stout guy, good frame, played at Alabama, experienced, kind of the heart and soul of that offensive line. So rightfully so, I think he gets praised in that aspect. And I think he is a big locker addition as well as an on the field addition. I've never heard so much about locker room offensive linemen until the Laramie Tunsil trade. That was a little funny there. But, Tyler Booker, I do think, he only heard good things about his character. I think he's a technically sound player. I mentioned he's the backbone offensive line in Alabama. He's got good patience, body positioning, and I think he's really cerebral in his way to identify blitzers coming from the back 7 that are rushing in the A or B gaps. He's not a standout athlete, and not like when I say not a standout athlete, I don't mean like, his athletic ability doesn't jump off the tape. It jumps off the tape in the wrong way. When you're running outside zone with this guy, I'm like, whoa, there's molasses moving across my screen. Tyler's slow. I don't love him working outside as a puller. I think he can get to the point of contact late. And I think that's hurt Alabama on a couple reps where they tried to run outside zone with him as a puller. So I think he's limited there. And then, the athletes only get better at the NFL level. So that's also something to note. His sound fundamentals and I think his talent between the ears is going to make him a day 1 starting option, because I think the team that's going to draft him is going to believe in him, and he makes him a potential first round pick. But his floor is really high. There's not much he's got to be coached on, right? But I think the reason I have him at 9 is because a lot of my concerns are uncoachable. I don't think you're making Tyler Booker magically a better athlete. I saw in the NFL Stock Exchange, they said it perfectly. We're going to reference them a lot because those guys are the best in the business. but he plays really good in a phone booth. And once you get him out of the phone booth, there's a lot of concerns, to put what they said nicely. But Tyler Booker, I think he's a little bit scheme limited. He's got to play in a north to south offense for him to be successful. But I have him at 9 because my type is a little bit more athletic guards, right? And you're getting just a guard. I'm not moving him to center. I'm not moving him to tackle. And I think everybody I have ahead of him, I'm more confident in at least their versatility, athletic ability, ceiling. But Booker's floor is high. He's comfortably my 9. I was not going to have him at 10, but lower on him than a lot of other people for the reasons I outlined there.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're looking for a powerful dude that is nasty and finishes blocks at the guard, Tyler Booker's the guy for you, right? 6'4.5", 34.5-inch arms. So again, he's got big, long limbs. He just is not the athlete that you see that some teams are going to want. I think he's, like you mentioned, you hit it on the head. He's scheme specific. I put it down. I think he's best in a gap scheme where he can block down. I don't even know if I'd want to pull him very often. Obviously, he is
I'd
kind
pull
of
him
like
0 times.
He is a tank, but I just don't think he moves well. Running back constantly have to wait for him. But he is a load when he gets going. That just is if he gets going in time. I mean, I see why people say he's the safest prospect. He only allowed 2 sacks in his career in Alabama, but it's like safe should mean that like he's also has a ton of these physical traits, and I don't see it like that. I think he has slow feet. He gets knocked off balance when he's having to mirror guys constantly. The athletic numbers that he tested at, although it's not end all be all, is not a good indication of his success in the NFL. He has good play strength, good arm length.
Those numbers are bad.
They're very bad. It's. I think that like out on the RAS score, it's like one of the bottom 100 guys that's ever been put in the system or something. Like it's very bad, very very bad. But I mean, you're looking for a big, strong, physical guy that's nasty, that's going to change the tone of your offensive line, that's not going to get ran through in the pass pro. Tyler Booker's your guy. But I agree with you. We're going to talk about this guy coming up for Purdue, Marcus Membo. You talk about like what the NFL, in my opinion, is kind of going to with guards. That's where I see Tyler Booker not being, right there. But I do have my concerns about Membo too. So we'll get to those because we have them both right here. But yeah, Tyler Booker, big, stout, physical guy, just limited athletically. And you got to, I don't know how many teams are going to be comfortable. Hey, we're going to draft him and just run a bunch of gap schemes. We're not going to run wide zone. We're not going to do any of this because he is going to be very limited if that's the scheme you put him in.
I think I might have to familiarize myself a little bit more with Tyler Booker and the positives, because I do think there's a good chance the Ravens take him in the first round, and it's a good scheme fit. But I gotta take out the draft analyst for the imaginary team that we make our big boards for, because you can't, if this is like a Raven specific big board, sure, I like Tyler Booker, but
yeah.
He's still limited in those aspects. Do you want to read your 10 through 7? You had Booker at 8, I know, so we see it similarly.
So I have Jonas Savanaia from Arizona at 10, Marcus Membo at 9, Tyler Booker at 8, and Ariante Ursary at 7. So what we have all the guys are the exact same, just in different orders.
Go figure. Same 4, no matches. That's
same 4, no.
Been a theme if you're new here. Where do you want to go next? Should we go to Marcus Membo? You kind of alluded to him.
Let's go to him. So, I'll start on Membo. I know that you're a little bit higher on him. You have him at 7. I have him at 9. I do think that this guy is going to be an interior offensive lineman, right? He played mostly tackle, but he has played a little bit of guard, 1,100 snaps at right tackle, 700 at right guard. When we talk about, hey, why is he going to move into interior offensive lineman? He's only got 32-inch arms. The threshold in the NFL that's way under the threshold. So, I mean, that would be a big stretch if you're going to take him there. The reason I think he's going to move into guard is because he's an elite athlete, like moving in space. This is what we talk about, like wide zone. If you want to pull this guy, this is where teams are going to want to take a Marcus Membo type of guy. Light feet, outside zone, and screens are his calling cards when he can get out in space and, block guys, block on the second level, things like that. I think he mirrors super easily. My one concern about moving him into guard is he's a slim dude. He looks very skinny. I know he says he's 303. He might be lighter than that at times. He needs to add more strength because there are some dudes on the interior offensive line or interior defensive line that will just run through his face. So those would be my concerns, and that's why I have him a little bit lower than you. But Marcus Membo, the athlete alone, no doubt about it, he has it. He has what NFL offenses want to do, getting out on the perimeter with their guys and having athletes out there to block, littler corners, littler safeties. He has all those things, but the little bit slimmer build is my concern.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal athlete, man. Like you mentioned, I wrote down he's like the Energizer Bunny on the interior offensive line. All the movement skills and more that you would want from an offensive line. Some of the best I've ever seen in terms of movement skills, in terms of athleticism on the interior. He's a hustler. He explodes off the line of scrimmage. He attacks with his hands. He's a great help blocker and a great puller, especially in the run game. His pad level can get high, and he's got a lighter frame, like you mentioned. So those are two of my biggest concerns with him. I think he's got to put on weight, right? I do think he's taken. Yeah, I think he's played games where he might not have even weighed 300 pounds. And 290 doesn't fly at guard in the NFL. And then the pad level, because I think that it will be his best if he's able to play center. I think his movement skills and athleticism are incredible, and I think that profiles super well as a center. But you got to have low pad level as a center, like I talked about with Jared Wilson, who could make minor tweaks to that. Marcus Membo really would need to work on his pad level to move to center, but I think in the long run, that would be his best spot. Moving him inside probably helps any, length limitations that he might have, because his potential super high, super elite athlete for this position. But like you mentioned, got to put on weight, got to improve the pad level, but those things are teachable. And his athleticism is not. That is why I have him at 7. And I'm really confident in his development because I think there's a lot of tools there.
Well, and one guy that I felt like I was watching every time I watched Marcus Membo was Will Campbell, because their stance is the exact same. Like, everyone wants to crucify Will Campbell. They're like, he stands straight up in his stance. And so it's like, so does Marcus Membo. But yeah, it leads to him playing a little bit high. He needs to get a little bit more hip bend in the hips. He has a better frame for interior offensive lineman at 6'4", so he can slide into there. So I totally agree with you. He's gonna be in there. If you can get a team that wants to move him to center, and he can figure, because snapping, that's the other thing, is just because they played guard and stuff, snapping is such a hard thing to figure out. Now you have to snap the ball and block a guy. You're probably making a lot of the calls too, because you are the commander of that offensive line, and sometimes the offense is. So that's the concern right there, is can he make that move? Athletically, there's no doubt about it, but we'll see if he can do that. I do love him as an interior offensive lineman, though, because of the measurements, because of the movement skills, how well he can get out in space and create mismatches on the perimeter with defensive guys.
I don't think where he gets drafted will reflect where we have. I think he's going to end up, by our consideration, as a value pick. I think he probably goes late second, early third, maybe mid third, and well behind the spot where Tyler Booker comes off the board. But you have them neck and neck, Booker above him. I have him above Booker. So, I think we view them more in the same class than it seems as though other people do. Do you want to move to Ursary or Big Jonah?
Let's go to Big Jonah. We'll stick with kind of the interior offensive line type of body, or, this will be a conversation to have and stuff. So you have Jonah at 8 and I have Jonah 7 at 10. So we'll let you start this one off.
So Jonah Sanaia, I believe right tackle for Arizona. Sometimes it's tough to tell, man, when that all 22 switches in between quarters. You're like, hold on, where'd this guy go? But he's a big player, powerful player. I love his hands, heavy hands. He's kind of just shoved away, put into an interior offensive lineman. And a lot of people talk about Donovan Jackson's potential ability to move to the outside full time. I think Jonah has a much better chance to be a swing tackle / guard at the NFL level. I think he did a good job on the outside, and he's got the length to stay there, but the power profile is really why I think people would want to move him into guard, because sure, he could be a tackle, right? But if you move him to guard, I think you kind of unlock a new player where he suddenly gets to play to his strengths. I think his lower body is so technically sound, and I think he can use his leg drive and powerful frame. Some guys are a little bit lopsided, right? They got higher heavier upper halves. I think his weight is really well balanced. And I think with his heavy hands, he can completely drive interior defensive linemen out of run lanes. So I think the ceiling is real high for him at guard, but I also think he gives you tackle ability in more than a pinch, right? I think if somebody like, if your tackle goes down in week 3 for a considerable amount of time, I don't know if you have to like go sign a free. I'm fine with Jonah out there. He's got the length to be able to do it, and I've seen him do it well at the college level. And I think he's being a little bit forgotten about in this class. There's some limitations with his pad level. I think he allows more athletic, bendier edge rushers to just get under and around him. And that is something, obviously, that gets limited. The situations where you're exposed to those weaknesses get limited when you're moved inside. So, again, another point where he might be moved to guard, but he has the capability to play on the outside. And I really like that about him. Good enough athlete to do it. I think he has reps where he's a really good athlete, but I think his more baseline is he's a good athlete. So he's my 8. And, somebody I think is a little bit under the radar all of a sudden after being a very hyped up player going into the 2024 season.
Yeah, and I like Jonah because I think that he's a swing NFL player, like you mentioned. Ideally he's a right guard, right or left guard. He's played mostly right guard. He has played right tackle and left tackle, so he's played multiple positions. He's going to be a swing guy. He's another guy like Tyler Booker. He's got longer arms than most of these offensive tackles that we're talking about. He's got 34 plus inch arms. He ran a 4.97 40-yard dash, which for his size was in the 95th percentile. He is a wide-bodied dude that's powerful. Same with Tyler Booker. You want to have him on the inside. I would probably feel more comfortable with Jonah Savanaia at tackle than I would Donovan Jackson. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Okay.
So that's where the conversation is like, hey, I would feel way more comfortable with him. But I also think he's a better guard. He's going to create movement in the run game. He's super powerful. There's a couple reps where he punches dudes and you visibly see like their head snap back. Like he has big, strong, heavy hands. His point of attack in the run game, how far he can drive guys off the ball, is really good. It's just, the question is if he was on the outside, if he was at tackle, talking about kind of he is a good athlete at times. I do think he struggles with speed. I think that at times he opens his hips, but that's not the ideal case for Jonah Savanaia. That's not where you want to play him. He can play there in a pinch, but you want him and his big frame and his big, powerful, stout body moving interior defensive linemen, creating gaps in the A and B gaps for guys to run through. You don't want him pass setting against Max Crosby, JJ or TJ Watt, all those guys, coming into the NFL, Abdul Carter, right? That is not where you want him to play in the NFL. So I agree with you. I think that there's a little bit more concerns for me because of, maybe just hey, is he just a swing guy? Like Marcus Mambeau is a better athlete than him. I think Tyler Booker is still more powerful than him. Jonah Savanaia is kind of a combination of both, but I don't know if he's as good at one thing as Mambeau or Marcus Mambeau or Tyler Booker. So that's where I kind of stand on Savanaia at 10 for me.
Yeah, I really like his feet. I think his technique on the outside, what he does well on the outside at tackle, I think can be applied to the inside, right? As a puller. I just think maybe sometimes there's a little bit stiffness in the hips. And again, maybe that's why he struggles a little bit with those speed rushers getting down to really match their pad level. But again, another weakness that is masked a little bit when you move somebody to the inside. And he checks the decleating box, like you mentioned, which is something that I look for at guard because, frankly, you got to be able to play pissed off if you're a guard. You're not going to – and listen, we're going to get to somebody that's pretty high on both of our lists that somebody needs to start pissing him off a little bit. Somebody plays in Columbia and not the one where the Gamecocks play. But, Jonah checks the pissed off box. I think he checks a lot more boxes than I expected going into the tape because, again, somebody that I think is being pushed down boards by a lot of these risers to the class, but somebody that I would advise people not to forget about.
100% agree. Let's go to my 7, Ariante Ursary.
Yeah.
He's 10 for you, so a little bit higher on my board. Still in, like we said, the same grouping. 6'6", 331 pounds. He measured at 31 inches at arms at the Senior Bowl. Now, the Senior Bowl, I don't know if the Senior Bowl was off or the Combine was off, but there's been like mixed measurements, and then Pro Day's been different. It's a little confusing, but he has better length than Will Campbell, some of those guys that we've been talking about. For his size, for his, how big he looks, running a 5.01 40-yard dash, in my opinion, was really impressive. And we'll get to a couple 40s here as we talk about some of these guys above Ariante Ursary that were ridiculous for offensive linemen. But I think that he has really good hands, powerful punch. He generates a ton of movement in zone schemes. He gets off the ball well, whether it's run or pass. He can get to his points in pass sets. For his size, he's a good athlete. When guys get in his frame, that's when I think he's the best. And that should be for all interior offensive linemen, but he is so strong at the point of attack. If guys are within his frame and he can get his hands on you, game over. It's over. Right? He's going to shut you down right there. He does struggle with speed at times. He is high-waisted, and he plays a little bit high, so that's where the elite guys that can bend and get under his arms are going to beat him. He does mistime his hand punches, in my opinion, too, even though he has good hands. They're late at certain times, too, and then he loses inside, too. I said he has a really good get-off. Sometimes he can overset, give up the inside, and struggles to recover a little bit, but the reason, we can both agree, tackles in the NFL draft are going to go more often and higher than interior offensive linemen. He's got the size, he's got the frame, he's got the footwork and stuff to be an offensive tackle. That's why I have him high, especially in this class, where there's a little bit more concerns with arm length issues at the top of the class. That's where I have Ariante Ursary sitting at 7 for me.
Yeah, and that I mentioned Jared Wilson was close to being my 10, but again, Ariante Ursary is an offensive tackle with starting potential. So that just checks the positional value box. This guy's got great frame, man. We talked about it with Cameron Williams, and Ariante Ursary is much more put together, much more ready for the NFL as a prospect than a guy like Cameron Williams, who's got a little bit of a ways to go. The number one thing that I have with Ursary that I liked about him is what you mentioned, that when he gets hands on, hands locked on, and body moving downhill, the rep is over, he has won, and you're going to be on the ground. The issue for me is getting to that point, right? Sometimes the hand placement can be wide. He might end up, getting flagged a little bit for holding. Sometimes they don't match up. Sometimes his hands are easy to, be disengaged by edge rushers. But once he is locked on, he's very good. So I think he's a little bit of coaching away from potentially being a really good offensive lineman. And, Minnesota, again, pumps out a very powerful, heavy-handed offensive lineman. Ursary, somebody that I think goes in the second round because he's a tackle. And, the top half of this tackle group is going to be gone in the first 40 picks. And after that, it's slim pickings, right? We talked about Booker, Savanaia, and Bo, a lot of guys that profile on the interior. The guy that we share, yes, we share a player in rankings at 6 that we'll get to is going to be an interior player. So Ariante Ursary probably comes off, in my opinion, the board a little bit earlier than he should. But I think if he goes to the right team, somebody that's willing to be patient with him, maybe he doesn't need to play week 1, but I do think you can get him on the field in meaningful snaps, of course, year 1, but maybe it's week 5, week 6, wait for somebody to start struggling. But there's potential with him that I really like. A little bit of a limited athlete, like you talked about, some stiffness in the hips, a little bit top heavy, but once he gets going and locks onto a player, there's few better in this class. So the ceiling with Ursary keeps him in my top 10 comfortably, and should have him go off the board in the top 64 picks.
I forgot to mention that, and I'm glad that you brought it up. I think Ariante Ursary is one of the most top-heavy guys in this class, and that's another con of him. He's constantly trying to fall, or he's falling forward and stuff. So that would be another concern. But that's because he can't bend. He can't seek at his hips. So he feels like he has to overextend 4 guys. But I agree with you. I think if you get this, he's like a mix between Cameron Williams, who needs to sit out like a year, maybe more, and someone who's ready to start like Armand Membu week 1. He might need a training camp in 6 weeks and then he comes in and plays. I don't think that he's going to be ready to come in and play starting week 1 a training camp and then week 1 of the preseason and then eventually opening day in the NFL. But I think if you develop him through those stages, you have someone, maybe he's a little bit of an older prospect, and then you have Ursary that can come in 6-7 weeks or whatever. That would be advantageous for him also. So you talked about it. Let's get to our 6 through 4. We do share a number 6, so I'll let you read off your 6 through 4 and then I'll go.
So my 6 through 4 is Gray Zabel, the offensive tackle who will move to the inside out of North Dakota State. My number 5 is Josh Simmons, the offensive tackle out of Ohio State. My number 4 is Josh Connerly Jr., the offensive tackle out of Oregon.
We do share it. So number 6 is Gray Zabel. This might be like the second one in all of our position rankings. We share a guy at the same position. So Gray Zabel at 6, Josh Connerly out of Oregon at 5, Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas at 4. So let's just start at the top since we have a matching. Gray Zabel, the dominant small school FCS prospect out of North Dakota State.
Really love his Colorado tape, man. I was, when you bring up a prospect that's like Missouri Valley player and you get a little bit nervous because the competition, but shout out the AD at North Dakota State, but especially the shout out to the AD at Colorado for having the onions to schedule North Dakota State in week 1, because that's no easy task. So, have to have a shout out for the ADs that are willing to schedule the FCS powerhouses. And, it was a big win for Colorado. They got a win that a lot of people didn't put enough respect on. And it was a big win for Gray Zabel. And a lot of the reason that I think people are more comfortable having him where they do, because it's less of a guessing game when you've seen it in the environment that he did it. A little bit more on Gray Zabel as a whole for me. So he's the tackle for the Bison, but he profiles as a guard at the NFL level who has the flexibility to move in at center because of his incredible power and athletic profile. He's a super powerful player, good leverage. That's the big portion of his eval for me. Play strength, lateral agility to win in all phases, right? He struggled on an island last season a little bit, but again, he's going to move inside. So less opportunities to be on an island. He's an absolute bulldozer in close quarters. And of course, he has that blue collar mentality. And no, I'm not just saying that because he plays for a team that wears the word Bison across their chest and they're from North Dakota. He's a bully on the interior. I talked about you got to play pissed off. Gray Zabel plays like he just got broken up with before every single game. So I don't have a problem with Gray Zabel and his attitude. I think he checks all the boxes in terms of what you want out of a blue collar style guard that interior D linemen are in for a rude awakening with if they just think this is some FCS rookie. Helmet scouters beware. Gray Zabel's a good player, and I know we have him at 6, but there's 5 offensive tackles, 4.5.
He's a first round talent. He's a first round talent.
Yep. 5.5, 4.5 offensive tackles, and then Gray Zabel. But this guy is the number 1 IOL for me. He will go in the first round. Houston Texan fans, Seattle Seahawk fans, start familiarizing yourselves now.
Yeah, I mean, he could fit with the Lions just with his play style, his personality, how he finishes. A lot of people will be like, oh, North Dakota State, how good can he be? The dude had pretty much NIL offers out the wazoo to leave. The reason he stayed at North Dakota State is because his brother, Jet, was a freshman tight end. He wanted to play with his brother in college. So the dude had every opportunity to leave. I mean, yeah, we don't know where it was too, but this guy, I guarantee you had Power 5 offers, Power 4 offers to go places. And he had NIL and he said, hey, he's from South Dakota. Hey, I'm going to be loyal. I'm going to stay here. Ended up working out. He won a national championship with them. He was a first-team All-American FCS guy. He was graded very well on both run and pass blocking. And honestly, I agree with you. I think one of his best games was the Colorado game. Like, that was some of the most impressive film against the top competition. He has 32.5-inch arms, which is why he's going to slide inside. He's explosive. His 36.5-inch vert was the best at the combine amongst offensive linemen. And when you think of an FCS guy that's at a smaller school with lesser competition, you need to have him dominate his film. And that's exactly what Gray Zabel did. He dominated his film, rep in and rep out. He's nasty. He finishes dominant all the time. He's, he is itching to just put someone in the ground like a pancake block. Like you can tell he's itching for that. He does provide position versatility. Obviously, he played tackle, but he's going to be on the inside in the NFL, but he brings you some of that. He could play, in my opinion, all three interior spots, whether it's center or the two guards. Pad level, good lower half explosion, strong hands. He's super smart. He finishes nasty. He gets to the second level. His Senior Bowl also against some of the best competition was very good. That's kind of when people turned it on and you're like, whoa, Gray Zabel. Hey, he played center and guard there, and it was great stuff, like great stuff against the best competition in the offseason there. So I had a question on him. Do you think he's the best run blocker in the class?
Yep.
I do too. I put that on there with a question mark to ask. I said best run blocker in this class. I think he is. I think that he's the nastiest. He's the best run blocker. He's the most polished. People are always going to knock the FCS competition, things like that. Yeah, he does create short edges because of that meddling arm length and stuff. But man, as an interior offensive lineman, this dude's as good as they come, and he's going to be a very good player for whoever gets him in the middle 20s, maybe the late 20s.
Yeah, 2 points I wanted to reiterate, right? The pad level you mentioned, really good. And then his ability to get off the line of scrimmage in a hurry, man. There's a lot of these powerful, really good run blocking offensive linemen that because they're so powerful, they take a second to get off the ball, right? That's just science. But Gray Zabel says, F that. We don't have science class at North Dakota State. I'm getting off the ball real fast and I'm going to run you over. So really confident in him translating. There's a lot of questions with that, obviously, when you get an FCS player. But Gray Zabel at 6 sounds wrong, but that's a testament, man, to this offensive tackle group. And obviously positional value comes into play. I think Zabel could go after my at least top 3 tackles just because of the way the board falls. But when tackle's good, you got to have them up high, and those are the guys that we have here from here on out.
For sure. Totally agree. Let's Josh Connerly is the only other guy we have matching up in here. So Josh Connerly is offensive lineman 5, and for me, offensive lineman 4 for Max. So we'll go here 6'4" and 5'8", 311 pounds. He has 33.5-inch arms. Another guy that's been over 1,700 snaps at the University of Oregon, who obviously for 2 years has been great both in the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. Just have not gotten over the national championship hunt, even though Phil Knight has been funding, their whole football program, whatever it is.
Their logo still stands for their trophy case.
Yep. That's how many trophies they have right now, so they can keep doing that. But I believe this guy was a basketball player, like a good basketball player in high school too, right? If I'm not mistaken,
I don't know, but he plays like it.
He is. That's what I love so much about him. That's why I'm super high on him, and I know you're even higher, so you'll get to add on to this. His movement skills, how good of an athlete he is, his fast feet, the way he can get him in and out of the ground. He plays well with his length. That's one thing. You could have 36-inch arms, but if you can't time your punch, it doesn't mean anything. I think that he plays well with his length. He knows how to get guys at the end of his punch and, time it well so they can't get into his chest. Another reason I really like him, he's a young prospect. He's only 21 years old. I still think he has his best football ahead of him, even though he's played big-time football and at a good amount. I think that he mirrors well on his pass rush. The one thing that I question about him, I don't think he's very dominant in the run game right now. Not a big finisher. He needs to develop NFL strength. And then he does struggle sometimes with TE stunts, but all that stuff can come because he's a young athlete, right? He can get bigger and stronger in the NFL system easily by his 23-year-old season, 2 years into the NFL. He can develop, the IQ and stuff with good coaching. So all the stuff that I kind of have concerns about are washed out because of the young prospect, because of the movement skills that I see him having on film.
Yeah, I think I agree with basically everything you said. He's a really good athlete, quick mover. I think he plays with good balance, good hands, his hand striking ability, hand placement in those strikes, accurate, and allows him to be efficient at the point of contact. He played on the left side for Oregon. I think that's where he'll stay ideally at the NFL level. Although with his athleticism, if a team drafts him and says, I want him to play guard, I'm not freaking out. I think he's got the ability to do that. But obviously, I say if I think you can play tackle, I'm going to list you as a tackle. But he's got flexibility to move, in my opinion. He's a really good pass protector, good enough hand-to-hand combat and ability on the move to, I think, with more weight added to his frame, become a very effective run defender, but a little bit of a work in progress there. But like you mentioned, young athlete, I don't have any question in his ability to become a really good run defender. But when you evaluate prospects, you can't just say, oh, yeah, he's going to do that. I don't write that down as a weakness. It's just an area for him to work on that's very notable. Sometimes his initial hand placement, is a little bit, you would like his hands to be a little bit more narrow on the frame of the defender. But I noted that the highs of his hand placement are incredible. I think even when he's on the move, he lands his hands really well. One of the better tackles in this class for me. He's at 4, but that's also a testament to the guys above him. Josh Connerly should be a first-round pick, may not end up being one just because of the amount of tackles in this class. But if you're getting him at the top of round 2, my goodness, is that a steal? And I really hope he's not the 31st overall pick to the Chiefs.
Yeah, I know that seems like a spot that would be very, very well for him, is Kansas City, obviously with needing tackle help and stuff. So we'll move on. All of these guys now that we haven't talked about already that are in both of ours, we'll talk about because they're in our top 3. So we'll start with Kelvin Banks. I have him at offensive lineman 4. Max has him at offensive lineman 2. So I want you to take this one away since you are very high on him.
Yeah, let's do it. I love Kelvin Banks, man. He put together some really good tape against some really good players this past season. He was somebody that in my way too early mock draft that I do in May every year after the draft, because of how unknown it was at the top of this class, he was my number 1 overall pick going into the offseason. So I had high expectations on him, and I think that prospect fatigue is hitting him a little bit. And that's not to say that that's the reason you have him at 4. But I've seen some people that have him in the 30s, 40s in their big board. And I'm like, all right, enough of that. Kelvin Banks, super powerful in both the pass and the run. So we just talked about Connerly, how we're maybe a little bit less confident in his floor right now against the run. I think Kelvin Banks is really good in both. He's been the mainstay on the left side for the Texas Longhorns, which is something that I take with much more than a grain of salt. If you're starting for Texas at left tackle for 3 years, and yes, he's a junior, so all 3 years, that's really important to me, and I really like that about him. Oregon could have had Kelvin Banks and Josh Connerly on the same O-line, which is crazy, but he flipped after Cristobal left. His base and his agility at the second level, his hand usage, super impressive. He's capable of beheading defenders, not putting them on the ground, putting them on the IR. And I actually think that might be one of his bigger weaknesses, because I do think he looks to do that a little too often. There's not that many guys that can just get into their stance, get in their drop steps, and then just destroy an end. He's capable of doing that, but sometimes it causes him to lunge, overreach a little bit, which can compromise his anchor, compromise his base. I think he needs to be perhaps a little bit better as a recoverer after losing the initial point of contact. But I think if he becomes more technically sound, keeps his body under control at the beginning, he'll have to go into recovery mode a lot less. So he can get overzealous in that aspect. But I think he's got a very high ceiling at tackle, and I think his movement skills and athletic ability and mean streak would make him an incredible guard. But no doubt I'm starting him at tackle if I draft him. But like the Bears at 10, they have Darnell Wright and Braxton Jones. So if they're like, hey, we're going to draft Kelvin Banks, put him at guard. And then obviously the Bears have guards that they traded for, but I don't care who they traded for. I'm starting Kelvin Banks if I draft him. And if they, aren't loving what they have out of Braxton Jones at left tackle after Kelvin Banks Jr.'s rookie year, you can move him outside. So I think he's got some flexibility there. But arm length, a little bit of a concern. Wingspan trumps that in my opinion. So Kelvin Banks, my OL2, I freaking love him, man.
Yeah, I mean, has better arm length than most of the guys in this class, 33.5 inches. So he has the ability to play at the interior, at the offensive tackle position. That's the one question I wrote to. Is he a guard also? Because I do love the way he moves in space, the way he gets out, the way he creates, knockback in the run game. Super powerful with his lowers. He anchors well. He's going to be the classic conversation we'll have coming up here in a couple slides with, the guy that everyone will want him to talk about, Will Campbell. He
Emory Jones?
is.
Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, not no. I didn't include him. My bad. No, he's that conversation right there. Is hey, is he a guard? But I'm starting him at tackle until he fails, and or
Yeah.
if he does go to a team that has two tackles, then you can put him in at guard, and eventually one day he's going to be able to play tackle also. So the position versatility is a big one. Super strong hands. I do agree with you. I think he fell on the ground. One thing I put is he's on the ground too much. He's clumsy, but I do think it's because he's trying to make those massive
Yeah.
pancake blocks. Like he's going for a double stack pancake block, not just a single. He wants to take it all. Like he wants to take your lunch money, leave you on the ground, take everything and stuff. So fell a little bit too much for my liking, which obviously you can't do anything if you're on your butt or you're on your back. You can't block anyone. So that was one of my concerns. And I do think he leans a little bit too much at times in the pass pro game, but man, athletically, the way he can block in the run game, the way he can reach, whether he played all left tackle, but the way he can reach, three techs, four eyes, overtake double teams, he can do a lot of really good things from either the guard or the tackle position. So I feel a little bit bad having him at offensive lineman 4, but the guys above him I like a little bit more than him. So anything else on Banks?
I was just gonna say I'm fine calling him the Draft Geeks podcast IHOP player of the year because he racks up pancakes, man. But yeah, I think I to be completely honest, I had tally marks on my notes for the amount of times he ended up on the ground. But I just think when offensive linemen end up on the ground, it's usually like his teammate across from him, like balance issues. That's usually the reason. I don't think Kelvin Banks has balance issues. I think that's a misinterpretation of his, not that he has a lack of body control. It's just inconsistency in that aspect, right? Like 85% of his reps, he operates under good body control and sometimes plus body control, where it's even better than good. And then on that 15%, I'm like, we got to stay calm. We can't chase that big play, right? It's like second and 5. We're ahead of the sticks. We can't chase the big play now, especially because you have a quarterback that I will say, I think Quinn Ewers made Kelvin Banks look pretty bad on some plays. Kelvin Banks would push a player all the way around the arc, and he's got him like 10, 12 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and his quarterback happens to be standing back there for whatever reason. So there's some reps where I was like, man, Quinn, you are killing him out here. And Banks, a couple times is just looks at his quarterback, throws a hand up, walks back. Sometimes you can't blame him, man. But like you said, I think he ends up on the ground a lot more than I would like him to. But I do think it's a coachable thing, not necessarily a balance thing. I think it's a misinterpretation of his, he's sometimes gets overzealous trying to jump on players right out of the gates. So he'll just need to dial it in a little bit more. But the ceiling is out of control with him, man. I think he's got like all pro, maybe you Pro Bowl more comfortably ceiling.
Yeah, and we talk about he started as a true freshman. He's young too. He's 21 years old. So he's another young guy like Josh Connerly that is going to have his best football ahead of him. He's going to get in the NFL system. He's going to get NFL coaching. He's going to have his best football ahead of him. So, Kelvin Banks Jr., I think that there was obviously a time where it was him or Will Campbell, who was offensive tackle 1. It's obviously cooled off of that a little bit more, but still going to be a very good offensive lineman in whatever scheme he goes to. Will probably be an early teens, maybe late teens pick. Could sneak it, a little bit earlier than that, maybe 11,
Seattle's
12.
my favorite fit if he somehow falls.
Yeah, that would be a good spot for him. So let's go I'll start with Josh Simmons. You had him at offensive lineman 5. I have him in offensive lineman 2. This is kind of the guy I'm standing on. Now, this one's hard, right? Because he missed so much time with his patella, the knee injury he had. He's 6'5", 317 pounds. He's a little bit shorter in the arms than I originally thought before he tested. He has exactly 33-inch arms. But this dude has 31 career starts. He started 18 games at left tackle and 13 games at right tackle, and he did come from San Diego State. Now, one of the reasons he was asked this, why he transferred, is he said, I just need to play better competition. Well, he never really got to that better competition because he got hurt a couple snaps into the Oregon game. That's going to be the hardest thing, and that was the hardest thing for me is, hey, I wanted to see him go against Abdul Carter. I wanted to see him go against some of these elite guys, be in there for that national championship run. But what I saw in film, man, he's loose. He's super fluid. He's really good athletically. His foot speed, change of directions for his size are awesome. I just do think he's very powerful in the run game. He has good inside hands and he uses them independently. He doesn't always have to use both hands when he's striking guys. Good play strength, digging out defenders. I think that he can pull well if that's what you want to do with your tackle pin pull, whether you want to block down with the tight end and wrap him around. Good first kick step, passes off twists well. He's a little bit of an older guy, not like old, but like he has experience. He's been at San Diego State, been here. The big thing is the knee injury. As far as we know, it was good at the combine. Like there was no major red flags. They're saying that he's on track to be ready for camp. Now, being ready for camp probably doesn't mean he's going to be starting week 1. It's probably like, hey, he'll be out there running and he'll be able to participate in team stuff, but there's no setbacks, nothing like that. That can be a scary injury. And then obviously not seeing him against a top competition was a little bit of a concern for me. Not concern because he couldn't control, but that's where he's lacking. If he has that film and he does what he did against the competition in the first 6 games, I believe that he would be offensive tackle 1, offensive tackle 2 for a lot more people.
Do you know there's chatter of him hosting a personal pro day at some point in April before the draft? So
Is there really?
Yeah. So I think if he can pull, and obviously by means would I want him to like rush something to try to, overdo it before the draft. Obviously the tape speaks for itself, but just to show that he is at that point in his recovery to be able to do that, I think would be an incredible step in the right direction for him, for teams to just be more comfortable with him, because the injury is obviously a very significant one, rare to come back to full form after that. But listen, if it's going to happen to you at some point in your career, you want it to happen in college where you are the youngest you could be, and your body is able to bounce back. For Josh Simmons, here's what I had written down, and it's not that far off from where you had, just the disparity, like I've always said in this episode, is it speaks to the guys at the top of this class and their ability. But dating back to the 2023 tape, which I had to dig back into to get the full read on Josh Simmons, he's demonstrated a very high level ability to absorb contact. So even if a guy gets hands on his chest first and he's on his shoulders, Josh Simmons is able to absorb the contact and win the rep. He plays on the move very well, wins with his hands. I think he specializes as a lineman in a pass-first offense that gets the ball out quick because of some struggles against the run. And I think he can get a little bit grabby at times. I don't know if that's because maybe he knows he has some length deficiencies, but I also think that can get cleaned up with coaching. I think it was something that I saw with Donovan Jackson too, where the hands land on the outside of the shoulder pads, and maybe that flies in college. It flies much less in the NFL. So he did have 26 career penalties in 32 games. So perhaps it's something to look for in the eval. I think the hands get a little bit wide, but I think when his hands do, listen, if you're playing with wide hands and you're racking up penalties and you're not winning as consistently as I'd like you to, when your hands do win in the proper spot, big concern. But he does win when his hands land in the proper spot. It's just about more consistently getting them to that spot, which is something that'll happen with NFL coaching. So Josh Simmons should be fine in that aspect, maybe some growing pains early on. But he's another guy in this tackle class who I believe can start on day 1 if he's healthy, and he plays left tackle. There's a lot of guys that we'll get to that play right tackle, perhaps less valuable. You'd be maybe less comfortable moving them over. Guys like Evan Neal hasn't worked. But Josh Simmons plays left tackle, the most valuable position on the offensive line. So if you like the tape, pull the trigger if he's healthy.
The thing for me about Josh Simmons, right, I have him as offensive lineman 2. That's not going to reflect where he's drafted to. Who did we say that about earlier? Was it
Marcus and Bo?
Yeah. He's probably not a top 10 pick, but I believe when it's all said and done and you're looking back on this class in 2 or 3 years and he's fully healthy, this is where I believe he stands and where his potential is because of the movement skills, because of those things. If he comes back from that injury, which it's sounding like he's going to, there's no concerns. If there were a little bit more concerns, I'd probably have pulled back a little bit off of him. But I believe that he has that potential to be that elite left tackle, starting left tackle for some team. Someone could take a chance on him. This would also be a nightmare scenario if he were to somehow fall to the Chiefs at 31,
Oh,
or
please
one of
no.
those Super Bowl contending teams there that always can use offensive linemen. He would be a really good pick there for one of those teams. Now, that's why I say my offensive line 2 probably doesn't match up with where he's going to be drafted. But when it's all said and done, when you're looking back on this class in 2 or 3 years, that's why I have him right there.
Man, to hell with making a big board where you think the guys are going to go. That's not what we're
True.
trying to do anyways. I get a question for you. Jace Campbell's the new GM of the Miami Dolphins. It's pick 13. Is Josh Simmons come off the board as early as 13? Because for me, that's kind of where it starts, but it's a long range that spans for me from 13 to Miami to like 34 to the Giants. That's kind of where I'm at with him right now from a mock draft standpoint.
Who else is on the board? Because I was going to bring this up with Kelvin Banks. Okay. I like Kelvin Banks to Miami. Yeah, so if Kelvin Banks is there, if Kelvin Banks is there, probably not.
Okay.
That would be like, I could see the Dolphins wanting to take Banks more than Simmons.
But if you're the GM,
yeah, I would take him over Banks. Okay. Yes, I would. At 13 for the Dolphins, yeah.
Yeah.
But okay. Let me retract that statement. I personally would, but I also think that the Dolphins need interior offensive linemen too, right? They don't just, so that's why I said Banks for me.
The flexibility there, right? There's a reason it's a good fit.
That's why, that's for me why like Banks could be the pick there for them. If I'm the GM, then I would be taking Simmons too, but also they have more needs than just left tackle on their offensive line. That's why Kelvin Banks would be a good fit for the Bears too. Like you said, like, okay, yeah, they do have 2 decent tackles. Darnell Wright, obviously, was a top 10 pick earlier a couple of years ago. But if Braxton Jones doesn't work out, well, cool. Kelvin Banks, you're starting at whatever spot we want you to until he doesn't work out. So there's more position versatility. But yes, as a true tackle, a team that's tackle needy, I would take Simmons at 13 if that's what the Dolphins wanted to.
Yeah, and we've mentioned guys that could slide in. I don't think Simmons can slide into guard, but that doesn't take anything away from him because I think he can survive at tackle. You mentioned with the Banks fits, like Seattle with the health of Abe Lucas up in the air and their needs on the interior offensive line, there's another spot. So maybe Simmons, you're right, could be a little bit, could slide, not just because of the injury, but because some guys are a little more flexible in terms of position versatility. But Jace Campbell would pull the trigger at 13, which is that's what matters.
And that means don't do it because I'm not right. So don't do it. That means he's offensive lineman 12. You need to add a 1 in front of the 2 right there. So let's move on
to the guys that should be the first 2 guys off the board. Probably.
Yeah, probably.
Not should in terms of what I think, but in terms of what I think will happen.
Yeah. We'll start with Will Campbell, and I want to start with you because you have him at offensive lineman 3. I have him at O lineman 1. Again, now this is not offensive tackles. This is straight up offensive lineman.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see what you say here because you have Will Campbell out of LSU, the offensive lineman 3 in this class.
So I struggled with this a little bit, not like my grade wise. My grade is what it is. It's first round grade. But when you're putting a list like this together and kind of a combo show that we're doing, right? If we were doing tackles, to be completely honest with you, I would have Will Campbell at 4. I'm more comfortable with Connerly straight up as a tackle than Campbell. If we're doing guards, he is so far and away number 1. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a hybrid there for me. That's why he lands at 3. And I do think there's value in this hybrid ranking because we just spent so much time talking about teams like the Bears, Dolphins, and Seahawks, and there's much more than those 3 that have needs both inside and out. So a little bit about Will Campbell from me. When you look at Will Campbell as an overall prospect, I think you're getting a smart, patient, and tone-setting offensive lineman from day one. Can you tell that I'm a sucker for guys with mean streaks? Yes. His 7th percentile arm length and God,
wingspan's
by the way,
worse.
Sidetrack. We need one person, a third-party organization to do arm length because I'm so sick of coaches on teams being even able to measure the players' arm lengths and then just these different varying numbers. It's so maddening because these thresholds have data to back up the reason they exist. Like, listen, as much as Will Campbell could talk about on the podium that it was never a concern for him leading up to, you know what, never mind. We're going to get to it. His 7th percentile arm length and 0th percentile wingspan virtually, for me, if I'm the coach, GM, whatever it is, virtually eliminate him from the tackle discussion for me. But I know that there are teams that are going to let him fail at tackle, which is fine. As a guard, though, I think you're getting a super technically sound player whose shortcomings are pretty much completely masked by moving inside. And I'll touch on the shortcomings in a second. I think he immediately changes a run and pass game for the better for whatever team he goes to. Now, some of those shortcomings, I think a lot of his losses are straight up due to length, man. I think sometimes, he's got to overset and gets beat inside. Why is he oversetting? Because if he doesn't overset at times, he can get beat getting by somebody going around the outside because he just doesn't have the length. The South Carolina tape for me was really telling because he went up against a variety of different edge rushers. Kyle Kennard had his way with him on some reps, and then when he got hands-on, like Will Campbell does, the rep is over. Like we talked about with Ariante Ursary, this is even more magnified. So he's so good with hands-on, and then like when he was going up, and there were few of them reps against Dylan Stewart, where he completely has to overset because it's against a better athlete. So I think against better athletes in the NFL, he's going to be forced to overset, get beat inside. I don't know if it's going to work for him at tackle. But he's such a good player. And if he moves to guard, I think that huge weakness, like again with Tyler Booker, there's uncoachable weaknesses. I think that's an uncoachable one, but you eliminate that from his evaluation and he gets so much better on paper and from an evaluation standpoint, and becomes eye-opening for me and worthy of being taken in the top 15, 12 as a guard. There's a lot of convo about positional value and how high can you draft a guard. You can draft Will Campbell high.
And the reason I have him as offensive lineman 1 is because you hit on it with Kelvin Banks a little bit. Although you said you could see Kelvin Banks being like an all-pro type guard. I see Will Campbell minimum as like an all-pro guard multiple times in his career, like multiple. And that's where the conversation comes in, is because what's too high to take a guard, even if he's an all-pro type guy? Like, I think he's that good of an interior offensive lineman. And I am in the task. Like, I'm a Patriots fan. You guys know that. I'm not sure how I feel about taking him at 4, but if they do, yeah. Sorry, this stuff is just, I switch it for the pod. If the Patriots do take him at 4, I want to see him fail at tackle. I think he will fail at tackle eventually, but I want to see it because he played against the best of the best talent in the SEC for 3 years and had minimal problems. Okay. Yeah, he did have some problems with the length and stuff, and it's only heightened in the NFL. But put him out there, let him see. Worst case scenario, you bump him into guard. I think he's an all-pro type guard. He brings that mean streak. He's super athletic. One of those guys that just moves so well in space. You saw that in the combine testing too. Good balance. He anchors well. He's got that mentality. Nasty. I mean, every time he goes on an interview or whatever, he has some new quote. Like, he talked about how, hey, it was never a problem for me for 3 years, and now everyone wants to talk about it now that they know my arm length. Or he talked about one time how if an offensive lineman gives up 1 sack a game, they're working at Walmart, or whatever it was. Like, he has that mentality, he has that personality about him. I agree. He's a smart player. Starting as a true freshman at LSU as a left tackle and playing for 3 straight years is no easy task. Not easy at all. So that speaks to the kind of character and things he is. The concern is the little bit of high pad level, in my opinion, and it's the length. Like, if guys, the reason short arm length is so hard in the NFL is because it makes the room for error less and less. You have to time your punches so well, and most guys have bigger than 33-inch arms on the edge, and so he's going to give up a lot more bull rushes and stuff because guys can get into his chest. They can beat his arms with a cross chop, whatever it is. That's where the length concerns come in. But man, it's been very, very good film for 3 straight years at LSU against some of the best competition. And in my opinion, why he's offensive lineman 1 is because, hey, worst case scenario, he doesn't work out at offensive tackle. You're going to put him in. He's probably an all-pro guard within 2 or 3 years in the NFL.
Yeah, I think we see it pretty similarly. The one thing I will say is I don't know if I necessarily envy those in charge of the NFL teams because, of course, on the human side of it, right, it's so easy to say let him fail at tackle. But once a human being has failed at tackle, like, are they able to like slide into guard and reset and become like reach their potential. I think a guy with Will Campbell's ability between the ears can, yes, but there is a scary element when you bring that into play because, like we've seen, I cannot believe I've brought up Evan Neal twice on this episode, but here we are. He totally failed at tackle, left and right, or excuse me, right, because Andrew Thomas on the left side, and then he moves into guard, and people are like, here he goes. No, it's done between the ears sometimes, but I think Will Campbell will be able to do it. I don't necessarily envy those in charge, those people that are going to have to be in charge on pulling the trigger on moving him inside. If whenever they deem, if he does that he's failed, whether it's like, training camp, I think training camp, he'll get reps at both. I think for as long as he has to establish himself in practice, he'll get reps at both, right? Preseason, maybe he get reps at both. And so, when the time comes that Will Campbell has a position, we'll see. And I can't wait for him because I think he'll take off at guard. I don't really see a track to failure at guard. I totally see a track to failure at tackle, which is why I'm like more confident in him as a guard. But I don't think he's pigeonholed to guard like maybe I thought a Peter Skoronski was. But listen, it's all there with Campbell on tape, right? There's so few weaknesses. It's just the one weakness that's really glaring is like we've seen it undo careers, but there are guys that succeed with shorter arm length. So, Rashawn Slater, list goes on and on and on.
Alaric Jackson, who just signed a huge contract with the Rams, has been succeeding.
Yeah, it works, right? The 32.5 measurement is scary, and then you get the 33, like it's everywhere. Yeah. Maybe we'll fly down to Baton Rouge and be like, yo, Will,
I'm gonna do it myself, damn it.
Have a conversation about your extended warranty and your arm length.
Yeah. It's
and the stance is, by the way, I'm done talking about the stance. Emory Jones says it's the same thing on the other side. They're clearly coached to play that way.
It's so funny that these people want to nitpick that. It blows my mind.
He's a little stiff at the hips, but sure, man. I mean, come on. He's not crazy stiff. That's nonsense.
Yeah, he's not like Ariante Ursary stiff and stuff. Like he bends better than them. But I was going to say, do you listen to With the First Pick podcast? I know, obviously a lot of people listen to NFL Stock Exchange. With the First Pick, it used to be Rick Spillman, and then Rick Spillman does like consulting, so he helps people hire, and Ryan Wilson on CBS, but they had a former NFL offensive lineman on. I forget who it was, and I probably should go back and listen to who it was. I skipped the intro. I just went straight into the rankings, to hear what they had to say about some of these guys. He brought up a good point. When you're playing interior offensive linemen, the pass rushers get on you a lot quicker than they do on the outside. And that it's not as easy of a switch from tackle to guard as people think. The measurements and stuff, it's easier to go, hey, on paper, tackle to guard than it is to go, hey, from guard, he has 32-inch arms, let's move him out. It's easier there. But like you mentioned, in between the ears and stuff, it's not easy. They get on you faster. You're dealing with a different type of pass rusher, bigger, more stout guys. And I don't see that as a concern for Will Campbell, but I do think it's kind of a thing to bring up when we're like, oh, it's so easy to move guys in from the tackle to the guard spot. It's like, that's not always the case. No, it's a totally different thing. Yeah, it's not seamless at all. It's totally different. You have different responsibilities and, run game and stuff. Not different at times, but instead of deuce blocking, a defensive end or tray blocking with a tight end, now you're deuce blocking a 340-pound interior defensive lineman with your center. And so it's a little bit different. I mean, a little slight change. I just don't think it's as easy as some people do, but I agree with you. I don't see a very likely track for him to fail at interior offensive line if that's where he ends up playing. So it only leaves us with one guy left. Oh, you got one more? Sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say I'm more comfortable with him there, but
yeah. Which most people will be. Most people will be. But one guy left. I'll let you take this one away because he is your offensive lineman 1, my offensive lineman 3, one of the biggest risers, Armand Membou.
Yeah, it's not the combine, folks. Please get out of my Instagram comment section saying this guy was nothing before the combine, blah, 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 blah. The tape happened before the combine, and the tape's the reason that there's a number 1 next to his ranking on my big board.
People just didn't watch the tape before the combine. Yeah, that's the problem.
That's how this works. So he was nothing before the Senior Bowl. It's like, no, the Senior Bowl made me go back and watch it again, or just go back and watch it for the first time. Like, quick shout out tight ends episode. Go watch/listen to it if you haven't. But like, I was not on track to watch Elijah Arroyo. Senior Bowl happens, like, till late April. Senior Bowl happens. I'm like, I gotta watch this guy now. And there you go. That's how this stuff works. That's why we have the pre-draft process. Armand Membu, star right tackle for Missouri. Got to watch him in person for a game. Really good player. They didn't win, though. That's what matters. Really good player, stellar athlete, great balance, pad level, lateral movement, all checks all the boxes right there. Super powerful in both the run and pass game, has an NFL frame. His blend of strong base and balance allows him to remain in control of most reps. So, he's gone up against nuanced pass rushers like a Donovan Ezeraku and the entire SEC. He's not, escaping the noise by moving over to right tackle. No, he's gone up against the best of the best, performed against the best of the best. If he can become more consistent in latching on to defenders and controlling defenders through the whistle, he latches on sometimes, majority of the time, but he doesn't finish as often. And it's crazy that I just mentioned that I'm a sucker for the guys that have mean streak and finish plays. And here we are at number 1. And my biggest critique of Armand Membu is I need you to play more pissed off football. He's got to finish the reps. I want to see him put more players in the ground because I've seen him do it a couple times and he's got the frame to be able to do it. He just needs to get a little bit angrier, need more smelling salts. I think if he can become more consistent in that, he can go from where I project him as a very good offensive tackle to a completely elite one, franchise-changing, franchise cornerstone, offensive line cornerstone. That's his ceiling. Ceiling is at the top of the league, basically, in the offense, at the offensive tackle position. His blend of power, technique, natural balance, the natural balance comes easy to him. He doesn't have to get through his initial steps, get off the offensive line. He's balanced the whole way, and his agility on the move. That blend that he has is so rare. And we talked about there's not like a Joe Alt in this class where it's just like you're ready to say finished product, put him in a box, put the bow on it, ship it off, and he'll be good. Armand Membu, I think he's got to be coached up a little bit. Like I mentioned, smelling salts. I'll send that his way wherever he's drafted. Yeah, I'll provide them courtesy of the Draft Geeks podcast. We'll make a tax write-off for the smelling salts for Armand Membu. And perhaps a new pregame playlist. But all jokes aside, it's not that big of a concern for me, but there are some reps where he lets a guy slide and his running back breaks a tackle and the guy that, he should have put in the ground ends up being able to help out bringing his teammate to the ground. So I think that's something he'll have to work on. But other than that, he's pretty complete to me, man. And freak athlete. Good Lord.
We talked about it with Tate Ratledge earlier, where
Armand Membu Tate Ratledge comp. I love it.
He tested very well, but you didn't see it on film. That's not the case with Armand Membu.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, for sure. He had a 34-inch vert and a 9'7" broad. Those were both in the 97th percentile. You see that explosion on film. You see him get out and run the 4.9 140 that he did. You see the twitched up athlete, the elite movement skills. He has raw natural strength, in my opinion. He can still tap into it even more, but he's just built so dense and has that strength that he can, move guys with ease. Good length. This is another conversation that's interesting, right? Because left tackle's a huge priority in the NFL. Obviously, the blind side. Right tackle, if you have left-handed quarterback, which, Tua Tagovailoa, Michael Penix, there are a couple in the league. I do think, and Eli Drinkwitz, his head coach at Missouri, did say that he believes he can play left tackle. I do believe that Armand Membu could make the switch. Now, people forget this. Joe Alt was a left tackle at Notre Dame. He played right tackle last year. Like, if you're as good of an offensive tackle as a lot of people think Armand Membu is, I believe he could make the switch if he needed to. I'm not saying I would, but if that's what a team wanted to and they're going to take him in the top 10, I think you need to feel comfortable that he could play left tackle if that's what you want him to do. If you're saying, ooh, I don't know if he can play left tackle, but we're just going to take him at, the 9th overall pick, wherever, in the top 10 and see, then that's a little bit risky. But if you have if you know that this guy can, or you have confidence in him, then I believe he is a top 10 pick. And even at right tackle, his film and his movement skills show that he could be a top 10 pick. And that's where it's hard is, I have him as O lineman 3. I have Josh Simmons as O lineman 2. I can almost guarantee that this guy's going to get drafted above Josh Simmons by no doubt about it in my mind. But, I do like Armand Membu. He does need to improve on a couple things. He misses with his hands at times, drops his eyes on contact. Another guy that, like we talked about, these top guys in my opinion, that we've had have all been young. He's 21 years old. He's one of the younger guys. He's younger than Will Campbell by a couple months. He's about the same age as Kelvin Banks, and he's younger than Josh Connerly by 3 months. So these guys are all going to be 21 years old in their rookie seasons. They're just going to get better. They're just going to get, coached better, learn all those things. And I think that Armand Membu is probably going to end up being a top 12 pick. We'll see, how high he ends up going, but he has all the makeup to be one of those elite guys in this class.
Yeah, I got two things. One's a comment and the other's a question for you. I'd be interested to ask Coach Drinkwitz if they played him at left tackle in practice. Like, I know there's a lot of coaches that come out in defensive, their offensive tackle prospects that are like, y'all can quit it. Like, he played left for us in practice a lot. Yeah. Or was it a situation where maybe they didn't? I maybe need to do my due diligence on that, finding out that answer. Maybe he said it. But that's something I'm definitely interested in. And the next one's a question for you because you're a Patriots fan and the Pats need tackle and they pick at 4. So ready, mini mock draft. Cam Ward 1, Abdul Carter 2, Travis Hunter 3. Uh-oh. The Pats
can't trade down.
Nobody's picking up the phone. Oh, no. The Pats have to make the pick.
It's going to be unpopular.
Are you good with it? I know you maybe will say Will Campbell. Are you good with it if it happens? And then what would you do?
No, I would be fine if it happened. I would be fine. I would rather trade down for it. If the scenario you just played out there, I'm drafting Tet McMillan. You know how high I am on Kenneroa McMillan. Right. I know we just signed Stephon Diggs, and it's going to leave a huge hole at the offensive line, but I would take Tet McMillan over Armand Membu at pick 4, in my opinion. Now, if you can trade down, say that, the Saints want to come up because they're like, hey, we need to get a quarterback because they're so bad. Yeah, they're so bad in, salary cap, or maybe the Jets want to come up, pick 7 and take him and stuff, even though it's an in-conference, in-division rival. Then I would feel more comfortable taking him there. It's hard because I would be fine with him, Will Campbell, at 4. It just wouldn't be my most popular opinion. I think that they would work out. The Will Campbell conversation still exists. Hey, he's going to be a tackle until he fails, and he's probably going to be an all-conference or an all-pro guard. But is that worthy of the 4th overall pick? Maybe in this draft class it is. If you're talking other draft classes, probably not. In this class, it might be. And then same with Armand Membu. If you really feel okay, let me answer this question. Sorry, now I'm just thinking about this. The Patriots would have to feel comfortable in him playing left tackle because they just signed Morgan Moses. Okay. So they would have to feel comfortable with him playing left tackle. Because last year they took Caden Wallace out of Penn State, who was specifically a right tackle, and tried to move him to left tackle. It didn't work out. Now you sign Morgan Moses to a 3-year deal. He's an older guy. If they have confidence in him, I would take it.
Is that Morgan Moses deal front loaded?
Yeah, I don't know if they've came out with it. Let me look at it.
I hope it is. And then while you look at that, so to add on to that mini mock scenario, right? This is a non-Patriots question. It's a question about your biggest demon. So here's the scenario again. Cam Ward 1, Shadur Sanders 2, because I think perhaps that's a possibility. Or we'll say Travis Hunter 2. So a non-Abdul Carter at 2. The New York Giants are on the clock with Abdul Carter there, but maybe the Giants' biggest / only strength is their defensive line. So here's a scenario for you, and just see how much you like it, gauge that, because the Giants have so many needs, and this front office is on their last legs. Carter at 3, call Carolina. Carolina moves up because I don't think it's that expensive this year to take Abdul Carter at 3. Giants move back to 8. Draft Armand Membu if he's there. Use the assets they traded back or got trading to trade back to trade up to 19 or 20. Get ahead of Pittsburgh. Draft Jackson Dart.
Are you asking if I like it?
Not if you like it. I know that's Jackson Dart at 19 is too early, but like as a, let's say the draft plays out and that's what they
Yeah.
did. Are you like, wow, like that was, they pulled
I
that
think
off. That's
that
impressive.
yeah, that's one of those draft day scenarios, literally the movie that
Yeah.
you're like, holy shit,
Right.
how did he pull that off? And you're looking at it and you're like, hey, Armand Membu is pretty good. And then Jackson Dart, if he pans out, and obviously Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson are there, but they're all both on 1-year contracts, and that's the perfect scenario for Jackson Dart, in my opinion. I still think 19's too high, but because of
Yeah.
the veteran quarterbacks they have there, if they were able to get Armand Membu to help the offensive line and Jackson Dart, although it's an overdraft because they got extra draft picks and stuff, I would like it. Yeah, I would be okay with it. I'd be okay with that for them.
And you have Andrew Thomas at left tackle, so
Yeah,
Armand Membu just plays right.
right.
It's just a thought because I just thought how good of a fit it is, but the
Yeah,
Giants taking him at 3, no matter what, is crazy because either they're passing on Carter Hunter or they're passing on a QB. But that's just a thought because I know that Dart's probably going to have to get traded up for, because if after the top 2 guys go, you can't just be like, oh yeah, I'm fine with Tyler Shuck. Like there's a drop off
yeah.
from the top 3 quarterbacks to number 4, top 1 to 2 and 3. This is the O-line episode, but at this podcast, we give you everything all in one episode. But yeah, so Mbu, I think he goes top 10. And I think he'll be the first tackle off the board. It's just about where he goes. I think it starts at 3. I'm sorry. I think it starts at 4.
For sure.
Where
He is in conversation for the Patriots at 4. No doubt about it.
For sure. And then probably again with Jacksonville, maybe not with the Raiders, absolutely with the Jets. That's an awesome fit, in my opinion. But then, you can keep going down the list. But this tackle class, like we've said this whole episode, man, doesn't get enough credit because we are a couple minutes, not a couple minutes, but a handful of minutes removed from talking about how much we like Gray Zabel and hyping him up. And we've talked about 5 guys since then. But yeah, this offensive tackle class, this offensive line class as a whole, I think it's one of the more unheralded strengths of this draft class. Obviously, outside of that, edge rusher, interior D line, running back group. This O-line class, man, it's worth doing your homework on, even if you don't like watching tape, just because some of these guys are absolute bullies. And I think this group could have its fingerprints on the league for years to come.
Agree. Let's I'll start reading my 10 through 1 and then you'll go. I have Jonah Savanaia from Arizona at 10, Marcus Membo from Purdue at 9, 8 is Tyler Booker from Alabama, 7 is Ariante Ursary from Minnesota, 6 is Gray Zabel, North Dakota State, 5 Josh Connerly, Oregon, 4 Kelvin Bates Jr., Texas, 3 Armand Membu from Missouri, 2 Josh Simmons from Ohio State, and 1 is Will Campbell from LSU for me.
And then for me, it's Ariante Ursary, the tackle out of Minnesota at 10, Tyler Booker, guard Alabama at 9, Jonah Savanaia, we'll see, guard or tackle out of Arizona at 8, Marcus Mbo, the guard/center out of Purdue at 7, Gray Zabel, guard/center out of North Dakota State at 6, Josh Simmons, the tackle out of Ohio State at 5, Josh Connerly, tackle out of Oregon at 4, Will Campbell, the tackle/guard out of LSU at 3, and then Kelvin Banks, the tackle out of Texas at 2. Armand Membu, the tackle out of Missouri at number 1. You got any closing thoughts?
I mean, that wraps up our offensive position previews. We've done, if you guys haven't already, we've done quarterbacks, we've done running backs, we've done receivers, and we did tight ends, and we combined O-line here. So we're done with offense. So, we're moving on to the defense side of the ball. We have a couple prospect interviews that were in the works to hopefully get on here sooner rather than later. Yep. And obviously mock drafts, whenever we can, we're going to come up with some unique ideas. And then obviously have some guests on there, but offense is done now. So if you guys want to go back and recap all those positions, you can either go to the YouTube, you can go to Spotify, Apple, wherever it is. But yeah, we are on to the defensive positions now.
Onto the underrated side of the ball, the side of the ball that wins championships, no matter what people say the league is trending to. So there's stuff to get excited about. If you aren't already excited for the draft, it's March 30th. So clock is ticking to April 24th. And if you missed any of the offensive episodes, you stink and you need to go back and catch yourself up, because it's been a lot of fun covering the offensive side of the ball. And we're not done with it, right? We'll have our final rankings episodes, however we see fit in doing that. And mock drafts give us opportunities to cover these guys, but these are some of our deep dives. And we hope you guys have enjoyed those. So if you don't have anything else for Jace Campbell at the Pats Drive, go follow him. And for Max Showstack over at the Draft Geek, we thank you guys for listening, and we will see you guys next time.